Got hung out there a little bit and he kind of caught me in the front, slung me into the wall, and that's all she wrote.
Hello and welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage, and we are standing outside where not very long ago, if you remember, we had two halves of a BMW E46 sitting here. We had the Pro Formula Drift car that I purchased from Johnathan Hurst that he campaigned for the 2022 and 2023 seasons. Won some battles, beat my friend Taylor Hull every time they raced. Hit a wall at Long Beach. Got hung out there a little bit and he kind of caught me in the front, slung me into the wall, and that's all she wrote. And then I had a silver M3 that I bought to get some of the parts I needed to fix the major crash damage that happened to the Pro chassis. Now, a simple logical thing to do would be to just assemble the car exactly how it was. The beauty of a drift car and its suspension is there's a tremendous amount of adjustability, so you can kind of compensate for maybe a 1/4 inch bend here or there. But I wanted it to be a whole lot better than just good enough. And while I am not ready to delve fully into the build of the E46 Pro drift car, because we've got plenty of other builds to go, I was tired of just that silver shell sitting here. So I decided I would go ahead and get started. We're gonna do the major body work, we're gonna do the major repair, so we can get rid of that M3, send it off to the great metal recyclers in the sky, or also known as Dales off of 365, and make a little bit more presentable Pro drift car chassis.
Yeah, you know, I could just go ahead and use it as it is, but we're gonna cut all of this out and start transplanting those stuff. Hello, time-lapse people, although we're not time-lapsing yet. First thing I'm starting to do is marking where we'll need to cut the spot welds that I want to sand down. The reason we're not starting off with just a spot weld bit or cutter is I don't want punch-through holes on the chassis just yet. That's a little bit more we have to weld, and keeping a nice flat surface is a little bit more ideal. We'll definitely use the cutter on this chassis because we're not worried as much on the metal behind. I don't know why I'm necessarily worried about this metal. Now, if we were doing a OEM repair, not a race car repair, this would be on a frame machine and we would actually pull this metal as much back to normal as possible. But because it is fully caged and they have actually pulled the main stuff back, our frame rails measured straight to them, and we confirmed the frame rails are indeed straight, there's not a lot that we can pull. There's tension into the cage, so we're basically going to remove the damaged sheet metal away from it and then rebuild it. Also, before anyone panics, safety glasses and I guess jack stands, although that's kind of a given the state of the suspension. So just to save your guys' ears, we are going to do time lapse. We don't want that high-pitched scream of our cutting tools as we're going along, but I'll pick you up as we go. But again, just make it easy on yourself. Mark your rough cut lines when you're doing demo work so you kind of know what you're trying to remove at first, and then, you know, rough cut, and then take a couple steps, fine cuts as you go. We're still just slowly cutting away. This is that extra bar that they put in. That is kind of like borderline on the legal side for Formula Drift. You're not supposed to tie your strut tower into the roll cage or firewall at all. This is landing technically before the firewall. It does not tie into the cage at all. And it was just kind of a brace they added. And I think there's probably some grace since this was literally a brand new build, 7 whole laps when the front corner got completely crushed. I'd like to cut it out and replace it, but I don't know exactly how that'll go to the inside. So again, what we're doing is we're just slowly taking everything away. We've got our fender mount loose. This upper section separates again from this lower section, so we're just cutting away from it, keeping it mostly intact for right now. They had already cut and relieved tension once, that's why it's spliced here. But the moment I cut it, you can see how much that tower popped up again, as like every single piece of the sheet metal is under tension. So you got to be careful when you're cutting apart a crashed car, because you never know how much something will spring back, especially when roll cages are involved. They're incredibly tight and can store so much energy. So if you're actually cutting apart a crash roll cage, you need to be like 5 times more careful. But yeah, we're just kind of working through all of our Hercules tools. I will say, there it is, that McGraw from Harbor Freight. That body saw, now again, it's brand new, we'll see. I've never had a good relationship with body saws. That thing so far has been really good. We'll see how it keeps on going, but hopefully you guys, I think I bumped you a little bit. There we go. Let's bring you around to a new angle. Does that look good? I have no clue if that looks good or not, but hopefully it does. It looks a whole lot different now. We are back kind of into the bulk of the damage, if, you know, the rest wasn't already damaged. Firewall, lower frame box, and the rocker. Now, where the roll cage actually ties in a little kicker is right there, and the plate went here, and it managed to bend that plate over. So, one thing I'll probably end up doing, which is not a fun thing to do, but we will get in there and we will, once we kind of get this pulled back straight or patched, I'm not sure what yet, we will actually cut that plate off and slide a new one in, which, yeah, it's not easy. Now, I am nowhere near the driver to worry about Formula Drift Pro, but this car does have a Formula Drift VIN number. And what I want to know is, can I make a patch to the unibody without following the full factory spot welds? Otherwise, like, this comes across, normally you would cut and section that. So I'm just making sure that I can cut and section this metal in. Problem is the firewall really doesn't have a section spot, but, you know, can we make one? Can we basically cut up our good car and get the metal we need to rebuild all of this to be straight? Now, of course, we're doing all of this for me to probably, you know, wad it completely back up myself. But that way it's my damage. You know, it's not pre-damaged. I spent all the time to fix it to ruin it myself. At least that's the plan, at least. So you can actually even see the discoloration from that plate getting welded in there. That gives you an idea how hard a hit Mr. Cash had at Long Beach. And then, of course, again, he went the full season and another season just like it is, and here I am cutting it all apart when I could have just, you know, started driving it, you know, with suspension and an engine. Well, it's the next morning and we're working outside. So we got to wait for it to dry a little bit because, of course, it had to rain overnight and through the morning. But what we did end up getting done in the dark is we just kind of dry fit this into place. I wanted to see how things were looking. We need to work it, fit it. It's not bolted into position here. I do not have that brace transferred over just yet. But once I got it to this point, I kind of decided we're not going to go absolutely crazy in this firewall section. I could spend the next 2.5 days pulling all of this out, but the car is already structurally sound. It ran for 2 seasons, totally crunched there. So I'm already kind of going overkill. So I'm going to figure out, I might still cut and section this one piece a little bit on top and just stack it to give me a little bit better mounting. You can see how it's supposed to look sitting there. And obviously we do not quite have that. So I may cut most of this out and then cut that at this seam, because technically this panel goes inside there and is sandwiched in here like a Supra. So I'm kind of thinking I may replace this one piece, get that kind of in position and just mock it up how it's supposed to down the firewall, transfer over that one other brace that goes right here, that little guy down there, and we're gonna send it. That's the current plan. I think it's a very good one. It's going to fix a lot of the littles. And yeah, also pay no attention to that. 1 BMW, 2 BMW, half BMW. So 3 BMWs. Once I got it to this point, I kind of decided we're not going to go absolutely crazy in this firewall section. We have got a whole lot cut. You notice there's a big chunk missing out of that BMW. And we've got the awful kind of removed here. We've got most of it pulled back straight-ish. When I start putting in good sheet metal, it's amazing how much this was actually pushed back. With the new part sitting in, it gives a good footing to our new strut tower. It's still kind of ugly down here, so I'm gonna have to do some final creatives. Right now, we have got our zinc primer on there, our weld-through primer. A big thing to remember with weld-through primer, you only want to put it in the spots you can't access later for corrosion resistance. The way the weld-through zinc coatings and stuff actually works is during the welding process, it kind of becomes liquid and that activates the zinc, kind of galvanizes it. Not really galvanizing, but you're basically melting it. And then you're supposed to clean off all of the weld-through primer that you're planning to put paint on later. It's only for hidden surfaces. So it's also very expensive. I think it's $50, $60 a can right now. So don't use it excessively. Put it just where you need to. Going in more with our repair, I left this little bit in rather than sectioning it there because it goes deep and sandwiched in so many different ways. Held our hood hinge, and this is one of the few things that really wasn't bent. So we're kind of using that as a reference to get the rest of our panel going. Rocker area, it'll be a thing. Good news is, for the most part, it is hidden under a side skirt, but we'll get that boxed back together and, you know, pulled back. It was mushed pretty good. I didn't have to do any of this. I'm already kind of going way beyond what it needed to be good. Drift car things. Now, if this was a car you're putting on the street, don't do any of this. This, you know, the spot weld and removing panels, yes. The weird splicing and coming to terms and basically accepting something's good enough, don't do it for a street car. This is a race car. It's not gonna be driven on the street. It's got a full roll cage, and I'll be wearing safety equipment in it. Basically, there's the driver's cell and everything else around it. So inside the driver's cell, good enough is never acceptable. Outside the driver's cell, enough to hold body panels and the wheels where they're supposed to be. Why is there dog hair in my welding helmet? Would you look at that? It's installed. And by installed, I mean test fitted, and I have to completely take it all back apart to finish welding the inner structure. But I'd wanted to dry fit everything and make sure that, you know, things were gonna line up. There's the obvious little bits of hammering that we need to do to get the stuff we had to bend to slide out as a single unit back in. I need to slide the bottom in a little bit more to get those seams matched up. They do when you're pushing. So again, it's gonna be a slow process of pulling things back, getting them pulled up and exact fitting it. But the rough fit shows we're good to go. Now, down here, no, not the hinge, our cap here. Again, this is that really fine line of repairing accident damage, but not doing it in a way that, one, takes too much time, and two, can be construed as adding strength to tie the strut tower into the main cage. I don't know that I'll ever drive even spec, you know, pro levels, but we're trying to keep it within the rules because, again, it has a VIN number for competition. Why not try to keep it capable and able to enter just in case? So we do have 2 layers of skin there, but it's a matter of making sure it's predominantly a cosmetic repair in that section, not a structural repair. So we'll probably keep some of those gaps. I'll hammer it down a little bit. I may add just a little bit extra skin. It all, again, boils down to that intent versus action type thing. If the intent is just the cosmetic basic repair, we're pretty good. If it looks like we're trying to claim the intent is a cosmetic repair, but we're doing things we're not supposed to, like fully tying a strut tower into the inner structure of a car, well, then you get in trouble. So clearly my intent is a cosmetic and basic strut tower repair. We're not trying to fully cheat the rules. So we got to pop the tower off. We need to sand and prep it with the zinc weld through primer and all of the surfaces. Do a little bit more cleanup on it. And then once it's actually in place, then I'll stitch weld it. Because if we look on the other side, you see the stitch welding there. We're going to do the same on this one to add strength. That is allowed, but I kind of want it more or less in position before we do all of that stitch welding. So off this will come. We're going to get all of the seam sealer removed. We'll get it scuffed and ready, and yeah, more welding. Well, the good thing is it's blowing directly into the shop doors too, so I had to close those really quick. All right, and it isn't the prettiest, but I feel like, you know, we're a little bit better than it used to be. We are fully attached with our strut tower, and we had to quickly go inside because the storms are back. The leftover welding to do is what's called the stitch welding, where again you can see those welds. We talked about them before. It just gives extra strength when you have just spot welds, but I don't want to do that right now because even though I have this little canopy, some water's getting through, and there's nothing more exciting than welding and then having a little pocket of water get into that weld and it exploding in your face. But given how bad this hit the wall in Long Beach, how much all of this, again, this section was basically flat here. So I feel like we rebuilt it in a really good way. And as soon as it slows down, we're gonna hang body panels. I basically wanted to get all the metal I needed out of the M3 so that can go away. And then I wanted to hang body panels on it today. So that way, you know, we've got a lot of projects. We're waiting on a bunch of little parts for different ones. And like I've said before, tackle little things, make small progress. Otherwise, it's easy to just sit there and get overwhelmed at everything. This is an empty shell. It's a far away from driving a car, but getting rid of one parts car, selling some stuff off of it, recouping the money out of that, and then making your shell look like a car is going to help motivate you, keep you excited about the project as you're working around on everything. Or if you're a sane person, you're working on your one project, not the field of them. Yeah, I've been impatient and wanted to keep working on this thing, but the cold and rain and wet, we are prevailing. We now have a door that you can open and close with the handle. The fender will fit right. I haven't drilled the holes yet and put the hardware in. The rear over fender started to fit that a little bit to get ready for all of the hardware to go in for that as well. I'm just excited. In one spot, it looks like a car, but I'm incredibly cold and my clothes are soaking wet. I don't want to get sick, so we're going to pack up our tools and call it a day. Now, I will say this too, speaking of tools, I got some of them here completely covered in dust. I've got all the saws and drills inside. These new Harbor Freight Hercules. Not paid, they sent me some of these. I bought some of these. I've been very impressed with them. The little 12-volt cutoff wheel, you can over-torque it. It's a 12-volt cutoff wheel with a 3-inch disc. Obviously, you can over-torque it if you use it wrong, but You saw in all the time lapse of all the drilling of the spot welds and grinding and cutting that we had to do, the batteries were pretty impressive. So we're still going to do a longer working review on them. I'm going to try to break them a little bit more because that's what I do. You know, I use tools like you guys do, very aggressively, and we'll see how they do long term. But so far, very happy with them. We'll see. Again, time will tell. Batteries have been amazing so far. I've had them in the rain. They're doing well. I will say the little 12 volt, the diamond cutoff wheel for tile, amazing for fiberglass. Who would have thunk it?
And there you have it. It looks like a car now, and I'm pretty excited. I went through, cut up and modified our over fenders in the back. Now, speaking of over fenders, if you remember when we went to Johnathan's, we also picked up these big giant over fenders, both for the rear and the front, but they interface a little bit with the side skirts, and I didn't, you know, I couldn't fit them perfectly without bumpers, so we didn't do that just yet. But I mean, there we go. Now, again, we're not fixing some of that damage. I just didn't want to get completely carried away. I just didn't want that strut tower damage. And we got that corner basically better than factory spec. I still need to scuff and paint and put one more bar in, but I consider it done, especially when you remember how completely mangled that whole section was. Yes, there's still wrinkles, but we are, again, within fractions of a millimeter on our strut towers now. I still need to cut the little clearance out, but we are so close to this thing being a roller. I wasn't necessarily really aiming to thrash this thing together. I'm still trying to decide on powertrains and things like that. Some people in the drift community get really angry if they feel like you're in too much car too early, so I logically put a 1,000 horsepower LS in it. But that's not what we're gonna do. Some people thought we were tearing apart our E30. No, he's gonna stay together. We're working on a couple computer options, maybe trying something different than Holley. Maybe we'll just put the Holley on it because I know it works really well and the other companies don't return emails. So we'll see what we do, but E30 is gonna stay just like it is. I'm gonna do very minimal to no tandems with it because I am the door bars. Some of you commented, hey, you can just go to the local tracks. They don't require roll cages when you're tandeming, and I get it. But I feel a whole lot better, you know, with that cage structure there protecting me. So yeah, it's a lot of car, but we can adjust for that by just reducing power. So that way we can run small tires. I'm not putting a quick change in this to start with. We're just gonna weld up a factory differential and send it. So I'm excited to keep working on it. One thing I do know we'll need to do at some point when we're putting it together is a couple more reinforcements for the rear subframes. All of you BMW guys, you know exactly what we're talking about when we reference rear subframes. The BMW, they did a lot of things really good with the E36 and E46 chassis. Rear subframe reinforcement and geometry was not one of them. They all rip apart. But one thing I did want to also kind of jump into, I am missing so many small parts for the car. Hood, front bumper, Initially, I needed some more body panels. There's some wiring that'd be useful. And I teased a little bit at another car that I got just for the purpose of putting this one together. So let me show you guys that and we'll walk around the gem that I bought. Gem is way too generous. So this is a BMW E46 328i, meaning it has the 2.8 liter inline six. And what makes this one desirable is somebody put a ZF manual transmission behind it, but not just any ZF, the 6-speed. Now for drifting, you don't really need 6 speeds, but it is a very valuable part of the car that as long as we don't ever break up or break, it could be useful for something. Now, unfortunately, this car is missing, you know, one of the mirrors. I was hoping to get mirrors off of it, but we do have a very rough-looking hood, a bumper, some resemblance of headlights, enough that we can put and make this car look fairly whole. And you may think to yourself, Jared, why don't you just, you know, make this thing nice? I don't know anyone who has pockets deep enough to make this one nice. This is good for parts donor. The interior seats could use a little bit of dye work, but they're good. It's got a premium audio system. No shift knob, because why would you want that? Trim that is removing itself. It's, you know, it's been around the block. As you can imagine, when we key that on, pretty much every light is on. What's under here? A bunch of relays. That's a good sign. Alright. Yeah, you know, just everything stays on. All the light warnings, all the everything. Low coolant, service engine. But as you can tell, it's not completely stock sounding. I found a few small upgrades, if we can call them that. Probably more like necessary repairs. And, oh yeah, I forgot. BMW does full service mode. Trusty, I believe that's the M54. You know, I could have gotten a strut tower off of this car, but I had already gotten the other car. We're missing things, but again, the car's purpose as a donor, it's good for it. Plus, it keeps me from, you know, having too much power. Appropriate way, you know, to fix the PVC leaks. These are notorious for tons of vacuum leaks and plastic hose leaks and coolant leaks. I'm not convinced they've all been addressed, but when the engine's out, we can easily do that when we get it ready to drop into there. So, yeah, look at this beauty. I don't see the beauty. I see the beauty in it as being the donor to make our drift car a little more drifty. But, you know those ideas you think are really good ones, and then you just get further down the path and you're like, should I have gone down there? But at any rate, we did get rid of one complete junker. It is gone. Our other shell now looks more like a car, and the next donor for the project is able to move under its own power, so that's always a plus. We're going to count that as a win. We made progress on the Pro Drift car. Again, the goal was just to get rid of that shell, and we're there. So now we can rotate between the Satellite and the Burnout car and the Porsche. There's a lot of things over there. We'll get them all done, but appreciate you guys, as always, hanging out with us in the shop while we do some body work on drift cars and just add a few more things to the skill set. We measured, taped, reinforced, and I feel like we were pretty successful in that repair because it doesn't look like it's been broken off. But anyway, guys, I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices, and you're going to need at least 4 BMWs to finish one BMW project. I don't make the rules. We'll see you.